It was a weekend light on goals, but heavy on monumental results as both the regular season title and playoff race got even tighter in the Canadian Premier League. I'm Mitchell Tierney. That is Charlie O'Connor Clark. And inexplicably, after we mimicked the Jose Escalante celebration there again, we've been invited back to host a second straight week of the CanPL Newsroom podcast. But while there were not many goals this weekend, there were some very important ones. And in a half hour or so, we'll be joined by the man who scored perhaps the most crucial goal of the weekend, Valour defender Rocco Romeo, to discuss a huge home win for the Winnipeggers. But let's look back quickly at the results from this weekend in the CPL. After another lengthy weather delay at Spruce Meadows, Cavalry were able to pick up a 1-0 victory over York United, courtesy of a goal from Jose Escalante, as we just showed you, to move up into second in the table. Later on Saturday, Atlético Ottawa and Forge played a 0-0 draw in the nation's capital, which keeps Atleti top of the table. And then on Sunday, Valour, they pick up a huge 1-0 win over Pacific on that aforementioned goal from Rocco Romeo. And we finished off the weekend with a banger in Edmonton as the Eddies, they picked up a 3-2 victory over the Halifax Wanderers, courtesy of a brace from Tobias Warshevsky. Azriel Gonzalez also scored for the Eddies in that match, while Sam Salter and an unfortunate own goal from an excellent Darlington Marissa Ranwa made up the scoring for the visitors. Charlie, I guess what's your biggest takeaway from another hectic weekend of the Canadian Premier League?
Yeah, it was another interesting one. Valour is probably the big story of the weekend, as we'll get to later. They're not dead yet. They're not tapping out on this season. They're getting closer, but also just a great day for FC Edmonton, I think, yesterday as well, because it's always nice to see, teams rewarded for good performances and to see a good crowd in Edmonton get rewarded for coming out to support that team.
Yeah, it had been a while since they've been back there. So a special moment certainly for Edmonton, and a historic week for our league and the sport in this country, as Mark Noonan was named the Canadian Premier League's second ever commissioner, as well as the CEO of Canadian Soccer Business. He joins the league with a wealth of experience, including time spent as the chief marketing officer for the United States Soccer Federation. He was a key part of that very successful 1999 Women's World Cup. He was also one of the key builders of Major League Soccer and Soccer United marketing that helped transform, really the business and marketing component of soccer in this region. And more recently, he was the CEO of Accra Hearts of Oak in Ghana. So he's got experience running individual clubs as well. Let's take a look now at Noonan's first visit to the CPL office and his initial thoughts from this past week.
World headquarters. Love it. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
How you doing? I'm Mark.
Oliver.
Nice to meet you, Oliver. How's it going? Hey, I'm Mark. Nice to meet you.
They're going to be following you around for
All right.
2 days.
Hopefully we'll keep you entertained, maybe a little bit. I grew up playing in the shadows of New York. We were all inspired by the NASL, which is no longer with us. It was the predecessor to Major League Soccer. So cool. I love it. And I was fortunate to grow up in an era where the Cosmos signed these incredible players, Pelé, Franz Beckenbauer, Giorgio Canaglia. Not only that, but we also, they signed players from our local town. So I had role models of guys that I grew up idolizing in my town. And it was just a great soccer environment to grow up with. Want me here? The big one. My experience with soccer and in sports is that it doesn't matter where you're from. When you're on the same team, you're on the same field, you're just one. And to be able to celebrate that connection of people from different backgrounds is something that we need more of. And I can't wait to use the CPL as a platform to celebrate the diversity within us, but also the connection that we have through soccer. And it's one of the great things that sport can do for its communities. That's what's exciting, because the talent is here, the infrastructure is here, and there's nothing holding us back to creating a great soccer nation.
And of course, Mark Noonan was in attendance in the nation's capital for a top-of-the-table clash between Atlético Ottawa and Forge FC. Going into the weekend, they were First was Ottawa, second was Forge. So a very big match. And this was a match that felt like a cup final. And if you've ever watched a cup final in soccer, you know that's not necessarily, a glowing indictment of what the game was, as it was cagey. It was two sides that really, really didn't want to make any major mistakes. And they really didn't over the course of 90 minutes. A game between two very good sides defensively, the two best defensive sides in the league, and that's really what ultimately won out on this day for Forge and Atlético Ottawa.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Just two teams that know how close things are and how high the stakes are in a game like this, and as you said, didn't want to make a mistake. I think maybe that's something that comes a little bit more from Atlético Ottawa than from Forge. They seem to maybe set the tone for this game a little bit more. They kind of played it on their terms at home a little bit, especially having been kind of thrashed by Forge last time they were in Ottawa, right? That 4-0 game just a few weeks ago. But Ottawa definitely came into this game hoping to make it, a little bit more locked down, a little bit more congested. Neither side was really able to get runners in behind or find those kind of really dangerous touches in a box that they would have wanted. Even in transition, that wasn't really as much of an option as sometimes it is for both of these teams playing against, other opponents. But yeah, I think it's at the end of the day a really, really good defensive performance from Ottawa, which is quite common. Obviously, they've kind of developed a reputation for that. And for Forge's side, just another bit of a frustrating one. They're, I guess, winless in 3 now. And as Bobby Smirniota said, I think we might hear from him in a bit, but kind of playing at 50% capacity at the moment, a bit of a lull in their season after some very good results earlier in August.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more positives to take out of this if you're Ottawa than if you're Forge. And again, as you mentioned, one of the big ones, is reversing the result that was the last time they came there. But this was a different defensive tact I think we saw from Atlético Ottawa than maybe we've seen against Forge and even the week before against Cavalry. And one of the things that Gonzalez mentioned going into this game was they did have more time to rest. They had more time to maybe be a little more active. And we saw that they got on the ball a lot more in this game and defended in the way that we've seen maybe Forge defend a lot more, in the sense that they had the ball. They were very smart in the areas they got it into. They didn't allow Forge to turn it over. And then sometimes even when they did, Forge were so desperate to get things going forward that they rushed their passes, and Ottawa were able to just regain it and turn it the other way on the counter press. So it was a bit of a new look from Atlético Ottawa, and that was exciting as we see the maybe next evolution of this team going into what is looking more and more like a playoff appearance for Ottawa.
Yeah, it was interesting that they maybe played a bit of a higher line, which can sometimes be pretty dangerous against Forge, and as a bit of a risky thing to do in a game like this, especially playing at home. But yeah, Ottawa kind of wanted to play out of the back a little bit more. They wanted to maybe just force Forge backwards a little bit more with the ball, kind of play a little bit, defending with the ball again, which is something that we've spoken about that Forge like to do. And it didn't necessarily turn into a lot of attacking play or massive chances or things like that. But I think there's a lot of positives that they're able to shut down, one of the most talented and deepest attacks in the CPL. So I think, as you said, there's definitely more positives to come out of this game for Ottawa than there are for Forge.
I feel like we subconsciously say the word massive so much when we're talking about Ottawa.
Did I say it again?
Oh yeah, you slipped in a few there without even realizing. I mean, I know it's a word that's just generally in our lexicon, but that's it always seems to happen. Let's hear from Carlos Gonzalez, because he had some thoughts on this match.
Well, I think that we did a quite complete game. I think that maybe the first 20-25 minutes were a little bit the worst of the team. But since the last 15 minutes of the first half, I felt that we were giving a good level. In certain moments of the second half, we were dominant against a dominant team. We take them the ball. So, I'm not happy because we didn't win today. But, the reality is that it's not a bad point, and that the image that the team gave this night was a good image.
Yeah, certainly. And, building on that, Zakaria Bahous, as a player who is very important for Atlético Ottawa down the stretch here as they try to pick up those U21 minutes. And he's been a guy who, has really sort of as a result of that, but also as a result of his play, been an important player for Ottawa. Let's hear his thoughts on this match.
Every game that we play, we approach it with the mentality to try to get 3 points always. As you can see from the beginning of the season, we're trying to play to finish at the top of the table. And obviously in games like those that you saw today, obviously 1 point is good, but it's frustrating because we're trying to get 3 points every time. So now it's time to, I guess, reset and focus on Friday to get 3 points.
Charlie, you alluded to the Bobby Smirniotis quote saying that Forge were maybe at 50% capacity in this game. He felt. I asked Kyle Becker directly that question. What did Bobby mean when he said you guys were at 50% capacity? And the way he took it was we didn't make nearly enough runs in behind. We were kind of lazy in our attacking play. We weren't direct enough. Forge were 0 for 10 on open play crosses in this match. And I don't think that was the deliveries. I think that had a lot more to do with the players being willing to get stuck in and get into those areas. With Tristan Borges out in this match, this due to suspension, this was another match where, I think we kind of start to wonder what Forge's best attacking unit looks like, because I'm not sure Taron Campbell is completely at his best out wide. We saw Kwasi Poku get a chance up there on the left wing. He didn't maybe have his best performance either. It seems like they maybe haven't found their best attacking unit yet. I know they've scored way more goals than anyone in the league, so that's it's not necessarily the biggest concern, but at the same time, this is something that they're going to want to figure out, especially in a one-off game type situation if they can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you need to know which is the front three that you want to start a playoff game. And I mean, Forge are in a position where they can bring on an entirely new front three in the 60th minute or so and just have that extra energy. But yeah, there's something that was a little bit maybe inefficient from them. And it's partly due to Ottawa's defensive solidity and how well they held their shape. But it stands out to me. Ottawa has 39 entries into the final third in this game, and they are 25 touches in the box. Forge have 77 final third entries and 13 touches in the box. Like that's kind of showing you just how much less efficient Forge were when they did get into the attacking areas. And exactly as Kyle Becker would have mentioned, there's none of those runs in behind to kind of get past that kind of back four that Ottawa, or back five that Ottawa was playing with, and find those dangerous pockets where Forge's kind of wingers and maybe their striker can really get on the ball and challenge the goalkeeper. So I think that's probably something that they're going to be maybe focusing on in these couple of days. I know they have a busy schedule coming up as well, so they'll kind of have to sort it out in match situations rather than on the training pitch.
Yeah, and we'll get into that busy schedule shortly. But before we do, let's hear from Forge FC head coach Bobby Smirniotis.
Maybe not a lot of clear-cut attacking opportunities, but a lot of hard work from both teams. You saw a team in Ottawa that I think put their best effort forward, not only off the ball, which they've been good, but also on the ball today. For us, a little bit slow in the first half in our motions and how we wanted to get about the field, and that picked up for us in the second half, where I thought we were a lot better.
Yeah, I think we definitely do have to mention one thing before we move on from this game, and that was Forge did actually score in this game, or at least it looked like that from the camera angles with Kyle Becker's long shot. You saw that probably in the highlights off the top if you're watching on YouTube. Certainly a difficult moment for them, and obviously disappointing, but at the same time, as you mentioned, they really didn't do much. That was their only real shot. I think Reza Rama had the only official shot on target, which was, I think, a cross he was trying to play from outside the box that found its way through. So it wasn't like they created a crazy amount of chances to, obviously like earn another goal.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's unfortunate and pretty unlucky for Forge, I think. But at the end of the day, I think Forge are very professional organization, and they're kind of a group of people that aren't going to make those kinds of excuses. They'll probably be the first ones to say that, yes, this is something that happened. But again, as you mentioned, Mitchell, at the end of the day, they didn't do enough to score another goal. Forge would rarely have been happy with a 1-0 win anywhere. So even at the end of the day, if that had counted or had been clearly spotted, then they still would have felt like they wanted another goal or two to properly, comfortably win that game. And that's not something that happened. So, it is what it is, and you kind of move on with it. So,
yeah, and before we do move on from this match, it was the final Pride match of the season. As Atlético Ottawa hosted their Soccer is for Everyone night in partnership with You Can Play. But yesterday, the league kicked off our Play As You Are Pride jersey auction presented by Volkswagen. Until Sunday, September 25th, you have a chance to bid on one-of-a-kind Pride-themed CPL jerseys signed by a player from your favorite team. Those kits include Chris Manella, Christian Oxner, Cairo Coeur, Noah Jensen, Dominic Zator, Mason Trafford, Josh Hurd, and Brett Levi's. All proceeds from the auction will be donated to the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity, who have a mission to empower gender and sexually diverse communities through education, research, and advocacy. Head over to CanPL.ca/Pride for more details and to place your bid. Some incredible looking jerseys there, certainly, and as we said, signed by the players themselves. So get over there and get your bids in. But let's bring on Benedict Rhodes as we move on in this show for probably the biggest match of this weekend in terms of what the result did for the standings. Valour taking on Pacific. Benny, this was a big result for Valour, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, like Valour. It wasn't a must-win game for Valour in terms of if they lost, they weren't eliminated from making the playoffs. But it would have been a lot harder if they had lost this game, of course. And picking up 3 points on the team directly above them in the table, now just 5 points back after winning this game against Pacific was absolutely crucial for this team, and that's exactly what they ended up doing. And today's guest on the show, Rocco Romeo, will, as we'll see in a second, scored a pretty emphatic goal, I guess it's probably fair to say. And then got choke slammed by Nassim Mekadesh for some reason. But it was a nice goal, nice win for Valour, and 3 huge points for them.
Yeah, 3 massive points for them. I said the word again, didn't I?
Yep, sure did.
3 big points for Valour.
Yeah, there's a penny in the massive jar. We don't make that much money. We'll put the pennies.
But Ben, as you mentioned, Valour come into this home game and they're outplaying the champions really for most of it. Obviously, there's factors there. Pacific just got back from Costa Rica from an emotional week down there, which we'll talk about later. But at the end of the day, this is a game where Valour's backs are kind of against the wall, and they maybe go into halftime feeling like they're playing better, but haven't finished any of their chances or anything like that. So Benedict, what was kind of the sense that you got from them, from Phil Dos Santos, on just kind of how they managed to sort of continuously force Pacific back to get more of those attacking opportunities and eventually put one away and claim these 3 points?
Yes, pretty much the exact words. Phil Dos Santos, you said they were better at halftime. He felt, and as the game progressed and as they got into halftime, he sort of challenged the team and sort of said, you guys are playing well. If you keep going, the goal will come. And eventually it did come, and Valour were rewarded for their efforts in the first half, and a little bit nervy maybe in the second half as they weren't able to find a second goal and really put it to bed. But for the most part, they were very, very good in this game, and also shout out to Callum Irving for making it a lot better than Pacific maybe should have been in this game.
Yeah, let's hear those exact words from Phil Dos Santos after the win against Pacific.
Coming out of a game that wasn't very good at home against Edmonton, it was important to come in well, and we did. And the guys got into halftime where I felt we were the best team, and I challenged them to step in the second half and keep doing what they were doing, and that the goal would come, and it came. And then it was, we had the best chances, maybe a chance to get the second, and it didn't came. So obviously it gets a bit nervy at the end, but I think that we felt like things were controlled, and without too much threat from Pacific, we were able to get a few breaks and have chances to kill the game. Apart from that, the guys, it's congrats, because they were challenged this week a lot.
Yeah, challenged this week a lot, and going to be a challenge for Valour going forward as they try to stay in this playoff race. And there's really isn't much margin for error from the Winnipeg side so far. So with that in mind, there isn't much of a chance to really tweak your roster in a big way. You want to stick with a very consistent group. And one of the maybe surprising decisions Phil DeSantos has made down the stretch so far is to go with a young goalkeeper, Ryan Yesley, who, evidently is now starting over last year's Canadian Premier League goalkeeper of the year, Jonathan Sirois. Benny, your thoughts on that decision from Phil and maybe what his thinking is in that?
Yeah, he said a few press conferences in a row now, stop asking me about Ryan Yesley and Jonathan Sirois. Because
that's why we're asking you, Benny.
Oh, exactly. Like he kind of says, like, Ryan has the hot hand at the moment. He's been very good. There's no reason to justify taking him out of the lineup. And I also wonder if there's a look at next season. With only a few games left in this year, right? Like, Yesley's under contract for next year. I think we expect Jonathan Sirois to go back to CF Montreal and stay there this time. And I think that's maybe partly what Phil DeSantis is doing is getting Yesley these minutes under his belt again and again to prepare him to likely, I think, be the starter next season.
Yeah, and that's the right thing to do. Probably, obviously, he is blessed with having two very good goalkeepers who can play at this level. But at the end of the day, Valour will need a goalkeeper next year, and Jonathan Sirois will probably be on an MLS bench at the very least next year because we know how good he is too. But maybe what of Pacific? I know that they're not going to make excuses for this game. It's the last thing they're going to do, but I will. They had one of the most emotional, evenings in club history on Tuesday down in Costa Rica, playing a very, very difficult game against Herediano, losing on penalties and a heartbreaker, and then they have to travel all the way up to Winnipeg. They're still on the road the whole time, and after being in Halifax just a weekend before then, they've been on the road a lot. So I know there's a lot of travel in the Canadian Premier League, but maybe not quite at that level most of the time. And again, not with such an emotional match. And the other thing is that, they played with 10 men for about 90 minutes in the last two games they'd played heading into this. But Benedict, what did you make of Pacific in this game? And were they just maybe a step off the pace for it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's anything of huge concern for Pacific. I think, you mentioned there's a lot of tired legs on that team. No Manny Aparicio, no Sean Young, no Abdou Samake, three players who probably would have played in this game, at least in some capacity. And I think it's just a matter of, tired legs and maybe not being at the mental sort of concentration, I guess, after playing such big games back to back like that.
Yeah, let's hear from Pacific head coach James Merriman on his thoughts on the match.
It's difficult. We looked tired. We looked fatigued. Our decision making. We tried to come in at halftime and speak about it and change things, and didn't really change, to be honest. And we didn't find our way into the match, and. Yeah, it's disappointing. It's a disappointing game for us. It's not an excuse. It's a reality that we were tired. We looked like we hit a wall and we couldn't find solutions. We couldn't find a way through it. So it's a disappointing performance from us.
Just a 5-point gap between the two sides now as well. And, as Pacific and any of these clubs know now, all of these games are very important. And that's exactly what goalkeeper Callum Irving said after the match.
Every game in this league is important. I think last year we were near the top and then we had a bad stretch and all of a sudden we were fighting to get in the playoffs. So we know that every game matters and we know that every point matters, and especially when you're playing against a team that's directly in competition with you for a playoff spot. So we knew this afternoon was a big one, and we knew we couldn't draw points, but unfortunately they pushed harder than us. They created more. They won more second balls, and we paid the price in the end.
Yeah, and speaking of very important games, and Benedict will keep you around for this, Valour have a couple of very big and important matches coming up in their schedule midweek on Wednesday and again on Sunday against Forge, a club who are ahead of them, have some games in hand, but are one of those top four teams right now that Valour is very much trying to displace. And again, any game right now matters if you're Valour, if you're any of these top four teams in terms of both, again, getting that home playoff date in terms of, the regular season title. And then at the same time, wanting to obviously make the playoffs outright if you're Valour as well. I guess, Benny, just your general thoughts going into this match of where the two sides are, and what will be so critical to the results.
Yeah, these are, I think, the two most important games of Valor's season. I think they're gonna want at least 3 points. They probably want more like 4 or 6. Well, they obviously want that, but I mean they'll probably need more like 4 or 6. Forge maybe a little bit of a wounded animal maybe after a loss and a draw, and they're gonna want to turn things around as well. They're gonna want at least 3 or 6 points from these two games. So I think it'll be exciting. Two teams who really need some points, and Forge looking to all but secure a playoff spot, and Valor trying to take advantage of a midweek game and a game in hand above some of the teams above them. So these games are, I'm not going to use the word, but they'll be sizable in terms of the rest of their season, and definitely very, very important.
Enormous and colossal and all of those words. This is one of arguably the most important weeks in Valor Football Club's history. With these home games coming up. Forge specifically are a very difficult team to play against, as we've seen, but after these two home games, they've only got one more at home left, and that's against Atlético Ottawa a couple weeks after, because Valor finished the season with 3 straight on the road, which is a very difficult way to end the season if you're in a playoff race. So they will be quite desperate for points. We've seen in the past this week or this year that Valor actually match up kind of well against Forge with their transitional play. They beat them at Tim Hortons Field, and then the last time at Tim Hortons Field, I think they scored first again. Just maybe couldn't hold them off that time. But I don't know what I'm expecting from these games. Again, Forge are not likely to sit back, and they're probably not likely to look as sluggish as they have in some of their more recent games especially against York and against Ottawa. But I don't know, where would we put Valor's playoff chances at the moment heading into this really, really difficult couple of games before they go back on the road?
I think they're still on the outside looking in. I think it'll be a tough stretch. They also have to play I think Cavalry and Ottawa as well in these last 7 games of the season, so it'll be difficult. But I mean, I think it was Rocco Romeo, who's going to be on our show hopefully soon. That said that they don't fear anybody in this league. They don't care who they're playing. They know they can go out and they can get a result, and they have the talent and the players available to them to be able to go and get a result like that. And I think that's the kind of mentality you want to see towards the end of the season. Phil DeSantos as well has kind of challenged the team and said, if you're not up for this part of the season, then you're in the wrong career. I think is what he said a couple weeks ago. Like you're not supposed to be part of my team if you're not going to be up for these games. And I think that'll be a huge part of their sort of mindset, I guess, going into these last stretch of the season.
It's a double-edged sword, though, isn't it, Benny? Because obviously, as you mentioned, they have some very, very difficult matches coming up. But when you're on the outside looking in, as you said, you almost want that in the sense that they can directly do damage to Forge, to Atlético Ottawa, all 3 of those games coming at home as well. And then they travel on the road to Cavalry, but they get the opportunity then to, have these 6-point matches and not only pick up 3 points themselves, but take away 3 points from another side. So in that sense, they have more control over their own destiny than perhaps they could.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to make the playoffs, you're going to have to face these teams ahead of them in the table at the moment. So if you want to do some damage in the playoffs, not just make up the numbers in the playoffs, you're going to want to test yourself against the Forge, Cavalry, Ottawa, and Pacific, because one of them would be a potential playoff opponent. So there's also an important test in that sense. And if not for this year, then for next year as well, they're going to be right up in their mix again, we assume.
Perfect. Well, let's take Benny out here and let's get to our guest here for this show, Rocco Romeo. Thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. How's the neck doing, man? It looked like Nassim slammed you pretty well after you scored that goal. Just your thoughts on the celebration and also the vibes around the team after that big goal.
Yeah, like Nassim, he just threw me to the ground, didn't it? But no, like you could tell from the team, like it was. Well, it's a bit loud over here, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, you could tell from. Sorry about that. No, you could tell from the team, like when that goal came in, it was just like a big relief from all of us. It was a very intense game. Stressful at times, because it was just a matter of who's going to make the first mistake early. So I'm happy that happy that I can contribute to the team, but more importantly, I'm very happy for the 3 points and a clean sheet.
Yeah, it was a pretty impressive takedown, I'm not going to lie. But in terms of the context of this win for you guys, it was a very important one for you guys, right? Like, to stay in the playoff race, you're only 5 points back now. Where is kind of the level of belief in this group at the moment, and how much confidence did a win like that over obviously the reigning champions kind of add to this group?
We always believed it from day one. When we all came into preseason, we always had the ambition and the goal to make history with this club, and to be in the contention and like keeping the gap very close. Puts pressure on us, but puts the pressure on teams above us. So honestly, like I've said, like in previous interviews, the character and the unity within the group is top. Like, it's something that is really unique and something that can really like push you and motivate you to go far. In this league, you can't take any team lightly, and you in any game it can be any different outcome that can come out. So, like I said, the togetherness of the team and the unity and the character that we've shown in yesterday's match, we have to carry it forward into the 2 back-to-back games against Forge now, which are going to be very good tests for us.
And speaking of tests, Pacific have obviously been a side that have caused you a lot of issues. I think this was only the second time you've ever beaten them in Canadian Premier League action. How big was that to get that win, and what was maybe the difference in this match from the previous meetings?
Yeah, it was massive, honestly. It's good to finally get one over on them. Credit to them; they're a very good team, very organized, very solid. But I think the key difference for us today was just like minimizing our mistakes. In previous games, you would see that we might be a bit sloppy in our passes, or we'd be too spread out sometimes, or kind of like not winning our individual battles. So I think that was like really the key difference today. Everyone was on job. Everyone was together, and like I said, I'm just very, very proud of the boys.
Yeah, we have a question from the chat here as well. They're wondering what was going through your mind when you had another 2 big scoring chances right after your goal, and have you ever had that many scoring chances in one game?
Probably not since I was playing like house league or like rep soccer. I haven't had that many chances, but yeah, like it was kind of surreal. In the moment, I was just like, okay, like I got one. Let's just try and go for another one. And then yeah, like credit to Callum on Pacific, 2 really good saves. I kind of like I watched back the game last night, and I should have just like smashed with my laces like into the goal, but it's hard to react in those moments when he made a top save off the header. So credit to him for that.
It looks like Charlie froze here, but we'll continue with the questions. You guys obviously have a very big series coming up, 2 matches against Forge. Your thoughts going into those games, and what will be very important against one of the better sides in the Canadian Premier League.
No, we're confident. We're very, very confident. The team understands the task ahead of us. So, we just take it day by day, and we we stay together. Like I said, the unity and the character within the group is very high, and everyone knows our situation. So, there's no room for error now. So, I think coming into the Forge game, we beat them before at home. We beat them away in their home. So anything is possible on the day.
Rocco, you've played more minutes as center back for this club than anybody else at the team. You've had a few different guys beside you throughout the year, whether it's Drew or Stefan or Nassim now or anybody else. But just the last few games, I think the last 5 games, you've conceded 1 or fewer goals. Just how have you seen kind of the defensive structure of this team improving and coming along, and how important is that to you guys being in the playoff race here?
Yeah, it's important. Football is all about scoring goals and conceding as little as possible. So, I think a job as a defender, you take pride in defending, and I think expressing that within the group, and to like even to your attackers or wingers, to make the run for the team or to get stuck in, or even to like kill a play, it's important. So, credit to the whole team, honestly, for staying together, because it honestly starts from the front and then carries all the way down to the keeper. So, we just have to continue to be disciplined and, just to not concede. So when we don't concede, we have a higher chance of winning the game.
And Rocco, what is it like to play for a coach like Phil DeSantos, who obviously we see it every week? He's incredibly passionate. He's got some great speeches and great quotes as well. What is it like to play for him? And obviously in his first full season with the club, what he's been able to do with the group.
Yeah, Phil's a top guy. He was actually a big reason of why I wanted to come back to Valour for on a permanent deal. So, me and him have a really good relationship. He takes very, very big pride and professionalism in what we do. He's a perfectionist in this way, which is good because you want someone who's going to always hold each other accountable, and really sets like really high demands. He brings his experience from the MLS into the CPL too, so I think it was good. It was a good change for the club, and you can see the direction that we're going into now.
Rocco, what does Phil say to you about kind of what your role is as a defender on this team who can join the attack sometimes? Obviously, you had a few chances in that game yesterday, and you've always been a guy that's able to get in the box on set pieces. But what kind of directive do you get from Phil on how you can best contribute to that side?
Like we have obviously we have our set play routines, and we try to put the ball in the right spots, but end of the day it's just maximizing the height that we have. You mentioned Drew, Nassim, Steph, and even like Tony. We're all like big guys, so there shouldn't be any reason why we shouldn't capitalize on set pieces with the height that we have.
Yeah, thanks for shrinking that a little bit. We know what Phil actually told you was like 5 minutes long and had a lot of soliloquies in it. So we appreciate you keeping it a little briefer. But final question here for you, Rocco. Obviously looking down the stretch here, you guys at least have a bit of control over your own destiny. You play Forge twice, you play Atletico, you play Cavalry. What does that mean for you guys to be able to kind of have things in your own hands over these last, I think it's 7 matches?
Yeah, to take advantage. When we were looking at the schedule before, we had a lot of home games coming up, so we don't this is our house. We take a lot of pride in our house and not letting anyone come in and dominate us essentially. So when we looked at the schedule, it's kind of like, we look at what games we have at home, how to maximize those points out of there. And then you look at the away schedule and, you see what you can grab from there. But it's like you said, it's in our hands. So it's for us to grab. And, I think what the vibe is like in the locker room and even the spirit within the group, it's looking very positive. So, like I said, we're focused on Forge now for the 2 back-to-back games, and we hope to maximize all the points available.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck this week.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Rocco.
Awesome. Rocco Romeo on the move during that interview, and Valour on the move in the Canadian Premier League as they again make the playoff race that much more interesting. But speaking of teams on the move, FC Edmonton have certainly been that over the past couple of weeks. They have been anywhere and everywhere across this great country, but they finally got back home, Charlie, and it was a great homecoming, wasn't it, for them?
It really, really was from kind of all angles, to be honest. All parts of this game, it's just a special moment, and we've seen every time they've won this year, it's 3 times now, just how much it means to this club, knowing their situation and how the odds are sometimes a little stacked against them. But this was a really, really impressive performance from FC Edmonton. They clearly looked much more comfortable at home. Wesley Timoteo explained that they feel more comfortable at home at Clark Stadium because they obviously train there every day. They know the turf very well. They just feel a little bit more confident playing in a familiar setting. Obviously, sleeping in your own bed the night before the game, which it is always nice, I think, when you've been on the road for so long, especially you didn't have to get on a plane the day before or 2 days before. But the way that Edmonton kind of, in many ways, set the tone of this match, they wanted to play out of the back very methodically. They were quite patient, looking for gaps in in Halifax's setup. They would play some of these kind of speculative searching balls down the wings just to try out different options, but they were for the most part very, very, again, patient and slowly working their way up the pitch. The back three were, I think they played something like 80, 90 passes between just those three players in this game because they were just so, willing to hold on to the ball and to cycle possession. Niall Higgins was very, very smart with his play. He did not miss a single pass in this game, despite playing in the middle of the back three. And we saw just how well Edmonton did to maybe take some of the transitional elements out of what Halifax wanted to do, kind of not be phased by any kind of pressing or anything like that. And eventually they found their goals from, a variety of situations, from a bit of quality, maybe a couple of defensive mistakes. And we'll talk about Halifax in a sec, but there is quality, obviously, in this Edmonton team. Toby Warshevsky is one of the most electric players in the league to watch. He's done some of the most special things in the CPL, and we saw that on full display in this game. But again, just a really, really impressive result from Edmonton, and especially to hold on to a 1-goal lead in the last 10 minutes of that game after conceding to make it 3-2. There were moments in this season where they concede a goal like that late, and maybe they concede again very quickly. They did that at York Lions Stadium when they took a late lead and ended up losing that game with 2 goals in 4 minutes. So there was a lot of maturity and growth, I think, in that performance. So a very impressive one from Alan Koch and his men. Congratulations to Alan Koch for 50 games in the CPL as well, we should mention. But a big day for the crowd at Clark Stadium, and nice to see that team rewarded for the work they've done.
Charlie, you just took out all of my talking points from this game, like one by one, in my show notes here. So, no, but Alan Koch, as you mentioned, 50th match in charge, but also he always likes to talk about FC opportunity and how almost everyone in that club is playing for their next contract. Well, Tobias Warshevsky, I think he is certainly one of those players who has more than earned his next contract, wherever that will be, whether that's in Edmonton or elsewhere.
Aston Villa.
Oh, wow. Okay. Charlie making some bold proclamations. Yeah. I think there's a lot of clubs right now that would take a player like Tobias Warshevsky because, yes, you mentioned he's had some magical moments this season. And I don't even know if the camera angle does that goal justice because it was absolutely incredible and easily the best goal. I mean, that's not hard to say this weekend necessarily, but one of the better goals scored in the past month in the Canadian Premier League. But he also added, and something Alan Koch will talk about, is the defensive side of his game. He is one of the most engaged players, I think, in the entire league. I think he's still leading in terms of total duels won in the league. And obviously sometimes that means he's, making some crazy scramble runs towards defenders and they're beating him. But at the same time, as a forward, you can do that. And that constant energy has allowed Edmonton to really become the counter-pressing team they are.
Yeah, and that's absolutely integral to the way they play, right? They need every single player on the pitch completely bought in, especially off the ball. And that's exactly what Warshevsky has been, especially recently. He does so much running in the game. He's clearly in very good shape. He's able to cover that much ground as a forward in the game, and to still be able to make the runs that he does when wingers have the ball, when fullbacks are advancing the ball upfield. He kind of can drift from half space to half space. He can pick out those dangerous passes as well. And, obviously he's got a very special finish in him as well. But he's just such an important kind of model for the player that FC Edmonton want to have in his side, especially up front. Wes Timoteo spoke about him obviously very glowingly after the game. He said that this is the real Toby Warshevsky. We see it every day in training, and you guys can see it when he scores goals like that. But even aside from that, we can see just how bought in he is to his entire role on this team and what he has to do off the ball to be able to create those transitional opportunities, which again are kind of the main way that FC Edmonton are looking to score a lot of the time.
And we talked about FC Edmonton scoring, but one of the ways they were able to prevent goals in this match was another young keeper, Darlington Murray-Saranwa, who evidently gets a little unlucky on that fifth goal of the match second goal Halifax scored, but fifth goal overall scored, where it comes off his back after just a great strike from Jeremy Gagnon-Laparé. But otherwise, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And one thing we've seen, down in these last few matches in the Canadian Premier League is young keepers are really, really starting to come through. And Murray-Saranwa was right up there leading the charge.
Yeah, absolutely. And just I guess the same as last weekend with a lot of these young keepers coming in and taking these opportunities. This one is Marissa Ranwa against Kieran Basket. But yeah, Darlington has been really impressive, and I think this is his third start of the season, I believe, and there was another game that he came in midway through, but he's a very young keeper. But it's nice to see kind of a local Edmonton kid getting to start between the pipes for his hometown team. And he did very, very well. He's continuing to improve. And I know that this is probably something that Alan Koch has spoken about, how, this is a reward for the work that he does in training every day. Obviously, Andreas Weikla has been a starter for much of the year, and he's very experienced and quite a talented shot stopper in this league. But when you see Marissa Ranwa putting in the work that he evidently is doing in training every day, Alan Koch has said with a bunch of players this year, he feels obligated to reward them and to give them those opportunities. And Marissa Ranwa has done very, very well with these. So I think we'll only continue to see him improve and to maybe develop more into somebody who could absolutely be a number one goalkeeper in the CPL.
And let's go to Edmonton and get the thoughts of FC Edmonton head coach Alan Koch.
As the game was going on, I normally try not to have too many thoughts because so much can happen in any instance in a game. But even when they scored 3-2, I was still proud of our group. I think we showed today the progression of who we are and what we're made of. I think the players showed how resilient they are to have got through everything we've gone through. And I think we played some good football at times today too. So very, very happy. I'm proud of this group. I almost say that every single week, but I'm really, really proud of the players, the staff, everybody that works for this club to keep things afloat. I'm incredibly proud of everybody.
And as we mentioned, FC Edmonton finally back home at Clark Stadium, and they were happy to be there, certainly, as Wes Timoteo of FC Edmonton will tell you.
Yeah, after 6 away games, long trip, finally got to play in front of our fans. Felt amazing. Just the energy right before the game started. Everyone was hyped and to play in front of our fans, and I think we showed during the game the energy that we had. And thanks to the fan, we got the energy until the last minute, and we gave them a good show.
Yeah, they certainly did give them a good show, but it maybe wasn't a great showing from the visitors. Halifax Wanderers, they look rejuvenated in recent weeks. A new system, some new players stepping up in different areas. And, they had some bright moments in this match, but ultimately, losing all 3 points in this game, Charlie, was that pretty close to a death knell for their playoff hopes?
It might be. It might well be. This is a game that they will be very, very frustrated with. Obviously, the lineup is quite similar to what it's been in recent weeks. That same kind of structure, same formation with the back three and the single striker and a second striker playing behind him. But in this game, that's Aiden Daniels playing off Sam Salter and not Thumpum Wanwe. So that's actually quite a different look, despite it being 10 out of 11 of the same players. It ends up being a very different sort of method and approach from Halifax, maybe a little bit slower. And this is probably the second or third time this year that Stephen Hart has said after a game that his team was lethargic with the ball, which is not a word that you want to be consistently using about a team. But yeah, it's a frustrating one for them. I think that they started poorly in both halves. They were a little bit too slow. They really let Edmonton come at them for the early stages of both halves. They improved both times. They started to, kind of after conceding in both halves, they started to get a little bit more involved, get more of the ball. But, there's a difference between the way that these teams played out of the back, because they were both a little bit slow in their build-up, playing between the center backs and looking for the fullbacks. But Edmonton's felt a little bit more methodical, and Halifax's felt like there were just fewer ideas, a little bit more just looking for ambitious balls over the top, or just kind of not being able to play through that Edmonton midfield. And they really struggled with it. They looked, again, better at the end of the second half, and they did score a goal, which was a great strike from Gagnon Lapare, although it did hit the post, really. But they didn't have a shot after that in that last 10 minutes, which is, again, a credit to Edmonton, but still a lot to be concerned about with Halifax and just how quickly they can move the ball at the moment.
Yeah, before we move on from this match, let's hear from Halifax Wanderers forward Samuel Salter.
Yeah, like Coach said, I think we conceded preventable goals, and we got 2 goals away, and usually it's good enough to have a win. So, we got to be better defensively.
Let's move from Edmonton to Calgary, where our own Alexandre Gongue-Ruzek will join us now. And Alex, is there anything you dislike more in the world right now than Calgary weather after a second straight weather delay? Really prevented this match from, starting right on time.
Yeah, a bad 7 days for Lightning in Calgary. I mean, last Sunday we get a nice little hour and a half delay at halftime, which was a bit jarring, I guess, off-putting. But hey, it's just an extended halftime. Today it was over, or not today, but this weekend it was over 2 hours, right after 15 minutes of play. You saw the weather, you thought it would hold off, and then just referee obviously smartly decides to give it, bring the game to a halt after first 15 minutes. The cameras weren't even able to operate properly. So you kind of figured something was coming, and then leads to this lengthy delay. But Cavalry came out strong. They came out electric, almost you could say, after this lightning break, gets this goal through Jose Escalante. And then from there, they see the job over the line. I think this was a big win for Cavalry. I mean, the week before, Ottawa got that goal right before halftime. There was the extended break, and then Cavalry were so flat in the second half. Whereas this game, they came out and they made sure they took advantage of the break, took care of business, because this was a game, they probably couldn't afford to lose. Things are tightening up with Valour's recent heroics, against Pacific, etc. So Cavalry here getting a bit of separation, and it was overall not the greatest performance. I mean, funnily enough, like they mentioned post-game, the Ottawa performance is probably better, but this is the one that they win, and at this stage of the season, that's all you can care about, right?
Alex, you got there yourself, but I did want to give you just so much credit for the line in your CanPL.ca match recap, where you said that both teams were looking for an electric start to the game, and they got it, but not in the way that they were hoping, which is just hilarious, man. But do you think that there's something to it, maybe that Cavalry had to go through this last week as well? They were maybe a little bit more prepared to come out of the break?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something to consider, because if you think about it, when Ottawa went through the same thing a week ago, they had gone through a similar thing against Edmonton a few weeks before themselves. So obviously there's something to having to sit there in 2 hours, for 2 hours, just twiddling your thumbs. I don't know. What do you do over a break like that? They're probably not allowed on their phones. So you're just literally sitting there, probably feet up against the wall, just waiting for any sort of news. So I think 100% it's a mental battle. It's a mental grind of knowing that in 5 minutes you could be asked to kick off in 2 hours, and then you have to go through the warm up and then kind of just refine your game focus, your level. And obviously for Cavalry, we saw it. They were a whole different team this time around. They looked more committed. They looked just up for the game and ready. Whereas that week ago, they just didn't look ready by the after the lightning break. They looked like, they were, they didn't feel like it felt like they were thrown into the game and it just restarted. Whereas this time they sat down, they'd regrouped, and they found their legs. So I certainly think there's some sort of edge to be gleamed. Maybe this is also as much on York, maybe not being ready for this as much as it is about Cavalry learning from their mistakes. But you could feel there was some sort of edge to be had from this break.
Yeah, there's some conspiracy theories going on in the chats about the delays being an attempt to drive up beer sales. I'm not sure that the Cavalry has any sort of control over the weather. That'd be quite impressive. But one of the things that obviously they've talked about this year is controlling the external or not controlling the external factors, but adapting well to external factors. Maybe like a delay like this. Alex, they're getting an opportunity here to kind of experience that firsthand over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's some adversity doesn't hurt, I think, ahead of the playoff run, because everything was going so well for them earlier in the early summer when they were on the 11-game undefeated run. Everything was coming up Cavalry. They're scoring for fun. Erben Peppel's leading the line. Ali Musi's unplayable. I know everything's just clicking for them. And then that kind of funnily enough started all with a 1-0 loss at home to York, where you kind of realize like, they're not necessarily invincible anymore. And I mean, that's soccer. It's a competitive league. There are good teams across the league. It's going to be hard to win, a lot of games in a row like that. But you could kind of tell their standards had not necessarily slipped, but they weren't getting the results in the same way. They had some very uncharacteristic Cavalry games, such as the 3-0 at home against, Ottawa, kind of game that that is very not like Cavalry. Yet if that happens in the playoffs, it could be debilitating for them. So to come out, in this manner against York and to get a result despite the circumstances, those are the sorts of results they need to see to I guess confirm their playoff spot officially. When and should that happen? Because Valour again making things interesting, and then those are the sorts of results you need to be able to grind out in the big games.
Yeah, let's hear from Cavalry head coach Tommy Wilden Jr.
Terrific. These games they've been one goal games for the majority. Martin's added a lot of good things to that team, and Babuli, he's got options, he's changing things, and that's good. And give him his time, he'll be competitive. I thought we should have had a penalty first half. I thought Jose got rugby tackle, but sometimes I think the officials can get caught into the other stuff he does, and we didn't get it. So we said, right, it can't be about the officials, play to the whistle. We've got to make sure we take things into our hands, and we did. And I thought it was a terrific battle.
Yeah, and Cavalry midfielder Charlie Trafford also talked about adapting after this match.
I don't think our form's been bad. Last week, obviously, the result doesn't go our way, but we look at that game back on our performance, and we think I don't want to say dominate. It's hard to say that when you lose 3-0, but we were pleased with our performance, especially in the first half, one of our better halves. So we just needed to look at that performance and how we can build on that, what we needed to change, and today we go and do that. And then we had to adapt and overcome and be a bit ugly today. You go and sit in the locker room for 2 hours. It's not easy, and that's one of the strengths in our group. We adapt and overcome. It's words we kind of live by in the group. We knew we were going to have to come out. There's going to be ugly moments. We're going to have to defend. I don't want to say a sigh of relief. That's a team obviously we've struggled with this year, but that we think we should beat comfortably. So happy to get that and move on from that one.
Just quickly on York then, they obviously looked amazing in Hamilton last weekend with that big win, and playing with a similar structure with Mo Babuli in that sort of 10 role. Alex, what did you make of them in this game? Because I don't think it was by any means a poor performance from them, just they can't find the goal, right?
I thought it was, if anything, it was pretty good. I think, especially the way they rallied and pushed right to the end. I mean, I think on another day, if they're not coming up against Marco Carducci, maybe Sebastian Gutierrez just takes an extra second or, picks out his spot on that breakaway, they at least get a point, if not 3. I think York, throughout the game, they were showing good signs offensively. And I think this shows how good of a signing this Mo Babuli one was. Because, when first brought in, it was a bit curious in the sense that very good number 9 in the CPL, but you already have a very good number 9 in Ozaze Di Rosario. Like, is this going to be a partnership? Are they going to lead the line together? Is Babuli going to run the channels like he always used to do at Forge? But it was impressive to watch him play for York because he's just everywhere. He's kind of in this free role as the number 10, just dropping as deep as the center backs and pushing as far up as Di Rosario. And I think that's really added another dimension to their attack that wasn't there in past viewings of them, earlier this season. So I think if they can use him as a link player going forward, finally get all their wingers healthy and back, continue to have that solid spine at the back. It seems like Babuli could kind of be that missing link that they had, because when they were at their best this year, they were very good defensively. It was just the attack was missing that something. And the good news is they've appeared to find that something in the form of Mo Babuli.
Yeah, let's hear from York United head coach Martin Nash.
Just to stimulate the offense and take a risk and put more numbers in the attack. To be quite honest, I thought defensively we were quite good today. But once we went down a goal, you had to take some risk, and I was toying with a few ideas, but I decided to go because we have some good players that play in the pockets. I decided to go with put Mikey in the pocket there and sacrifice Noah and get someone higher at the pitch, and I think it worked as far as creating chances, but we just weren't able to find the equalizer.
And let's take a look at the standings now as Charlie takes a look over his back at something, trying to hide during that clip.
My door just fell off its hinges. It's fine.
Nice. Yeah.
Anyway,
we were going so smoothly in this show. Something had to happen, but taking a look at the standings now, maybe a little more separation at the top, but also taking the games in hand as well. And with Valour, making that congested as well. The race is truly on, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, Valour is the team in particular that I'm super intrigued about, because it feels like at this point the race kind of hinges on them making a race. Because I think at this point York and Halifax, never say never. I mean, 11, 12 points, it's not unrealistic, but it's very, very far-fetched. Valour just 5 points behind, and their next 2 games really could decide their season. Forge twice at home. You win one of those games, or win one, draw one, win both, all of a sudden you're tied with Forge, or very much in the mix with that top 4. So with Valour, they've got it laid out interestingly in the fact that they play, I think, 3 of the top 4 teams at home in their last couple of home games. It means the race is wide open for at least a couple of more weeks, and I think that's going to be fascinating from that regard. And then no matter what happens with the top 4, just the way it's going to be seeded with the new 2-legged playoffs, etc. Some of the matchups, like imagine what a Cavalry Ottawa matchup could look like, just as an example. Or Forge Ottawa, or some of these potential matchups. Very early to be talking about playoff matchups, of course, but there's just so many layers to that top 4 battle, as well as Valour potentially making it a top 5 battle, depending what they do against Forge, because feels like that Forge 2-game back-to-back home game set could really make or break the Valour's ability to make this a top 5 race down the stretch.
Absolutely. And let's look at the next leg of that race and how you can get involved in all the action through the CPL Predictor presented by ComeOn. And as always, head over to CanPL.ca/predictor to get your shouts in ahead of this weekend's matches, where you can win weekly prizes, a number of exciting prize draws as well. There'll be no prizes for Charlie and Alex, unfortunately, but I am going to ask them to make some predictions here. And Alex, I'm gonna give you the tough one here, and be ruthless. Valour versus Forge Wednesday. We'll take the Wednesday matchup. I won't make you do both. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, Valour at home, they've seemed to thrive in these sorts of big games there as of late when the season's on the line. They've been very good defensively at home. I mean, Forge has been good on the road, but I'm going to give Valour the narrow edge just to make things interesting in the playoff race. You just feel like it's going to go down to the wire, isn't it? It'd feel wrong to have a boring, straightforward top 4 race. So I'm giving Valour the narrow edge. If I'm going to put a score on it, let's say a good 2-1, something just to stoke the fires and really make things good in the stretch run.
I like that, Alex, making the prediction for the neutrals here. On Friday, obviously, Atlético, they take on FC Edmonton. That is an opportunity for FC Spoiler to play their role at once again. As like I said, they have a number of games against big clubs down the stretch, so if they can pick up any points against any of them, it could be big. Looking ahead to Saturday and Sunday now, Pacific, they take on York in a pretty big match. Charlie, let's get your thoughts on this one, because obviously Pacific, they themselves really need to win right now, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I think they'll be back at home. They'll be a little more well rested, and they'll be very hungry to kind of shift their focus fully to this run in a league. So I think that this is a 3-1 for Pacific.
There you go. And one final game I do want to mention here outside of the Canadian Premier League, and that is the League One Ontario final between Vaughan Azzurri and Blue Devils FC. That is September 3rd, a 1 p.m. kickoff at the Ontario Soccer Center in Vaughan. So you're going to want to get out and watch, maybe some players who very shortly will be in the Canadian Premier League, or who have been in the Canadian Premier League in the past, playing in that match. League One Ontario doing some great things this year and have been doing some great things. So get out and support that match. But that brings us to the end of our show. Don't forget to get your bids in the CanPL Play As You Are auction presented by Volkswagen. And have no fear, Christian Jack, he'll be back next week on the show, we think. So, but Charlie and I have definitely enjoyed spending the past few Mondays with you, and we hope you've enjoyed them as well. Thanks again to Rocco Romeo of Valour for joining the show. On behalf of Alex Gonge-Ruzic, Benedict Rhodes, Charlie O'Connor-Clark, and the entire CanPL Newsroom, I'm Mitchell Tierney, and we'll talk to you next week.